Hi and welcome to another SCAR Divi preview. This is not a preview for the SCAR Divi 3.35 pre-alpha version, previewing some of the changes to the new SCAR Divi API. Now, in the previous video I showcased the tscar client object, which is now in charge of most of the client functions you can use in SCAR. However, there's also some other changes. The first few are to the input API. This basically includes the mouse and keyboard functions, which have all been changed and somewhat more unified. And aside from that, there's also some very big changes to the bitmap and color finding APIs. Now I'm going to demonstrate how the new tscar bitmap object works, which has basically replaced the indexes and several functions which were previously available in SCAR. Now a lot more will be added to this, but there's already a great deal of things that can be done with this. So I'm going to show you a very simple way of generating bitmap first from the client, and that's basically by just getting our client and calling the capture method, which will create a tscar bitmap object containing the entire client. Now the capture x method allows you to specify a a box which you're trying to get from the client, but we're just going to use capture here, and then just the debug bitmap method which we're used to, which has been modified to use the tscar bitmap object. I'm going to select our little scripting area here as the client and just run it. As you can see, the debug image shows the scripting area, which is basically the output that we were expecting. Now, this is some very basic things you could do with the tscar bitmap object. Now, if we look at the methods it contains, it has canvas, which is, well, canvas is something we're all familiar with, so that's there. The clone method allows you to copy the tscar bitmap object and just create a completely new object containing the same bitmap. So that could be useful if you would like to copy a current bitmap you're working with to do some other stuff with, which you don't want to, well, without losing the current bitmap. So you can just clone it if you'd like. So do take in mind these the clone will be a completely separate object, so both objects should be freed, or you can have SCAR free it for you. Now the create method takes a string object, which, well, a string which represents a bitmap string, which used to be converted to a bitmap using the bitmap from string method. However, now you can either input a string, which now doesn't require width and height anymore, into the constructor of the tscar bitmap, or you can use the load from string or the load from string method, and you can use the save to string method to convert a bitmap into a string. So that can be useful for any number of things, but it replaces a lot of functions that were available before. But as you can see, the string is now doesn't require any width or height to be specified, as this is included in the string, and the format for this is already available somewhere on the forums and will also be documented later on. Now you can also get the device context of the bitmap. That's also fairly straightforward. You've got the height there, and then a whole series of load from file methods to get the bitmap from a BMP, JPEG, or PNG file, and same thing to save to them. Then there's mirror, which just mirrors, well, it flips the bitmap horizontally. There used to be a create mirrored bitmap method, so this is basically a replacement for that. Then there's resize. Resize will resize the bitmap by stretching it into the new size. Do take in mind that this internally creates a new bitmap, so the device context of the bitmap will change after calling this method. So in essence, you should if you're using the device context, you should always get it from the bitmap rather than just trying to store it somewhere. So get it straight from the bitmap object. Next, you've got the set size method. This sets a new size for the bitmap without actually retaining the current image. So if you call this, the image will just be erased, basically. Then there's the toString method. This I don't think this is actually implemented, so that won't really do anything because you have to use save to string to create an actual bitmap string. So this is just the default for the object. There's transcolor, which is short for transparent color. Now I'll get back to that later because it's a very useful property. And then there's the width, which should also be fairly obvious. So I'd also like to discuss these two first methods, assign and assign to. And this basically allows you to assign the data from another bitmap to this one. Now, aside from supporting T-SCAR bitmap, as you can see, it says T object here instead of T-SCAR bitmap. You can also assign the data from a T bitmap object and a T picture object into this bitmap, which makes it very easy to copy data from this bitmap, well, from a T-SCAR bitmap into a form control, for example. You can also use assign to copy the bitmap from this bitmap into a form component. So this will get it from any other object, being T-SCAR bitmap, T bitmap, or T picture, and this will copy the data from the T-SCAR bitmap you're working with to any of those types. So that's basically what's implemented for T-SCAR bitmap at the moment, but there will certainly be more things added to this later on. For example, replacements for the fastSetPixel API and fastGetPixel API. So the next thing I'd like to take a look at is how this is basically used in a find bitmap method. Now, the previous find bitmap and find bitmap tolerance functions have been removed, so there's you can't actually search the entire client anymore without specifying a search area. Now, you can obviously specify a search area which encompasses the entire client by getting the size of the client from the T-SCAR client object for your active client. Now in this case I'm just going to keep it rather simple and going to demonstrate how this works. So the new find bitmap method is basically the equivalent of the previous find bitmap in method, and it's pretty much the same except for the ordering of the parameters. And now you've got obviously the T-SCAR bitmap object as a parameter instead of an integer reference to a bitmap. So in this case I'm just going to add in some well, semi-random values here. So let's make that 1000. Well, actually I know the size of my window since it's the recording size for my video, so this should be accurate. And well, I'm not going to search for the client in the client. That would be rather well, rather stupid. But I will be getting a piece of my wallpaper in the back here and just moving the mouse over that. So here I'm going to check if the bitmap is found, then move the mouse to set coordinates. So the bitmap picker obviously still works exactly the same as it did before. Let's just get part of this thing here. Okay, well, that bitmap's a bit large, so I'm going to get a bit smaller one. Well, let's color picker. Okay, so yeah, that should be better. So I'm going to copy this into my script instead of the get client.capture. Already got the desktop selected. Okay, and now I can just go ahead and run this. Now, before I do that, I'm going to uncouple my mouse from the virtual machine I'm using, and now I can run it. Oh yeah, of course, forgot to specify my variables. Still fairly important. That never changes. Okay, so that should do it. Alright, so to run it now, as you can see, the mouse moved to the position that we selected the bitmap from. So that's basically how that works. Now you may have noticed that move mouse moved the mouse very smoothly to that position. That is because of the changes I've made to the mouse API, and I'm going to take a closer look at that right now. So I've already been over pretty much everything that's important from the for the bitmap API. And now to take a closer look at the mouse API. Basically, before you had the move mouse, which would move your cursor instantly, move mouse smooth, which would do it a bit smoother. Then there was the wind mouse algorithm created by Benjamin Land, which moved it, well, using some wind physics algorithms. That made the movement a bit smoother. And basically, I've done away with pretty much everything of the mouse API except for the wind mouse algorithm, which now powers pretty much everything. However, it's still possible to just move the cursor, but I've renamed that to set mouse pos. So if I just set mouse pos, okay. As the method to get the cursor position is get mouse pos, I've named it like that. So if I, for example, enter some arbitrary values in there and run the script, the cursor just jumps into place there. And to again demonstrate the move mouse API, that moves the cursor very smoothly. Now, aside from set cursor pos and move mouse, there are also the move mouse box, which will probably be adapted to use a t-box rather than coordinates in integers, and the move mouse X variant. Now, this move mouse X should actually be move mouse expert, but that has been changed for the next build. That's just a little bug, but you can use the move mouse X method here to specify the random X and random Y coordinates, as well as mouse speed, which is 25 by default, if I recall correctly. So that's basically the most important things for the mouse API. You don't have a lot of methods to work with right now, but they're essentially everything you need. So all of the deprecated methods, which kind of bulked up the API, have been removed now. Now, aside from that, there's obviously the keyboard API, which is certainly as important. I'm just going to open up Notepad here to demonstrate. So first thing I'll want to do is get me the client. Just cast that to a SCAR window client for a second. SCAR window, okay. Because I want to be able to activate the client window when I run the script. So just put a small wait there. And now we're going to take a look at no API. So yeah, they still have to be removed, but you've now got the type. Okay, messing up a bit here. Okay, so we've got the type text and type text X functions. The first is basically a replacement for the type keys method, which previously typed text in a somewhat human-like fashion. And type text X allows you to add some extra parameters to that. If you set use delays to false, in that case you will be typing it without the delays, which make it look human-like. So I'm going to quickly demonstrate how type text works right now. So basically the same as before. You input a string in there. You select the client window in this case, and just unhook this mouse. Oh, of course, this should be activate, not active. I keep making that mistake. So now we can run it. Obviously, I've got SAPS lock on, and speed of that could just use some tweaking, but you get the general idea. So there's still some bugs to work out there. Now, aside from that, you've got some methods that have been replaced for the synth keys API, and well, I'm going to just stick to removing this here. The new methods basically are called press key in this case. So we've got press key for a character, press key X for character with an interval for the press, press virtual key, which allows you to input a virtual key identifier, and press virtual key X. So those should also be fairly straightforward. To demonstrate this one here, just going to add, for example, character E, and let's say an interval of 10 milliseconds, and I will just run that. It types E in Notepad window there. Then aside from that, we've got the press V key X method, and I will be using another virtual key for that, obviously. Now, before you could use the get key code method, if I remember correctly. However, this method has been replaced with another, and I believe that is get virtual key, or I'm hoping it is anyway. Oh no, that's, yeah, char to v key. Yes, that's it. So you enter your character in there to get the virtual key code, run this, and it types out E once again. Now, aside from this, both the virtual key and regular key methods have their equivalents in the to hold or release a key. So I'm just going to, yeah, so you've got the V key down and up methods, and aside from that, obviously also the key down and key up methods, which I mistakenly said I had to remove. The actual change that has been made here is that key up and key down previously would accept virtual keys, and now they accept a character, whereas V key up and V key down now accept a virtual key code. So those are some of the most important changes. Aside from that, the color API has been changed quite a lot. And one thing I'd like to demonstrate is a new replacement basically for a lot of the previous somewhat less frequently used color finding methods, like find color circle, find color triangle, find color skip boxes, and well, more of those. And I've basically replaced all of those with a new method called find color TPA. So we all know TPA stands for T-point array. And this basically allows you to specify a search area in individual coordinates rather than a square area. This is useful for actually one single reason, which is that now there's also a lot of methods like TPA from circle, which allows you to basically replicate the effects of find color circle. And there's also methods, of course, to extract boxes and such from a T-point array, which allows you to specify very complex search areas. So I'm just going to demonstrate that by finding a color on my desktop here. Let's just select some of this. Well, let's say here this orangey color, and well, I'll need to get somewhat of a reference search area in there. Well, that should suffice. So we'll need to create our T-point array, so I'm going to call that TPA. And the first thing we'll want to do is create this T-point array from our search area, which we've already selected. So we're going to assign a TPA from box to that. And we still have the box method here. So we're just going to copy those coordinates in there. And now we can simply call find color TPA. I must certainly not forget to define those x and y coordinate variables now. And we're going to copy our color in there. So we've got the color and our TPA search area. Also make that an if statement. And once again, move the mouse to those coordinates. Now I'm going to define the x and y variables. And that's basically it. So quickly detaching my mouse, and when we run this, we can see that the mouse moves to the found color quite efficiently. So that's basically it for this this short preview video. I will probably be making more of these as more features are added, and I will see you in the next one.